Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of Manifesting Muslima. I'm your host, Zara Pedersen, and in today's episode, we are going to be talking about Ramadan, but we're going to focus specifically on mental health matters during the month of Ramadan. The reason why we're going to do this is actually because it is very relevant to me, so I know that I'm not a unique person, that I'm not that special, that I have unique experiences on this earth. And so TikTok has taught me that, by the way, in case you're wondering. TikTok has taught me that I haven't had a unique thought or experience in my life. For those of you on TikTok, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And so if I'm experiencing something, then the likelihood of somebody else experiencing the same thing or something very, very similar is actually quite high. And for that reason, I wanted to have this conversation today, kind of early on, still during Ramadan, because I think also for a lot of us, this is when, if we have certain issues with our mental health or certain struggles with our mental health, this is when it really starts popping up, because we're more than a week in, and it's not that the excitement of Ramadan wears off, but now we're in a bit of a routine with how it feels on ourselves, what we're doing, all of those things. So it's not like it's as fresh and it was like, oh, Ramadan is here. It's more like, okay, we're in Ramadan now. Now we're all doing it, and we're all just feeling the weight of Ramadan in the way that it's supposed to weigh us down, if that makes sense. And I don't say weigh us down as something negative, but Ramadan is not an easy thing for a reason. That's not necessarily what we're talking about today. So let me get back on track with the actual topic. Oh, you got for those of you who are watching on video, you've got Zucchini in the back. You're so lucky. He doesn't want to sit with me right now, so that's okay. You're not going to hear him purr. I know a lot of you kind of commented on that last. I'm like, oh, I can hear the little guest on your lap. Yes, I had my little guest on my lap and you could hear it. Okay, so let me start off by sharing my experience. So for those of you who have been following me for some time, who've worked with me or something, you may have heard me speak about the fact that, I have anxiety and depression. And that's something that I've had for the majority of my life. In fact, it's to the point where it's not something that you can sort of test in that way or kind of pinpoint exactly, but it is believed that I, have had, that my brain has chemical imbalances when it comes to the anxiety. And then the anxiety has fueled the depression, because anxiety and depression, they're best friends. The thing about depression is she's not loyal. She likes all the messy ones. She likes all the messy. So if you have PCOS, probably also PCOS, but I was actually going to say PTSD. If you have PTSD, then she's also right there. She's also best friends with PTSD. PCOS girlies, is she also a friend of PCOS? I'm sorry. If you have OCD, she's right there next to the OCD as well. She's like, I also want to be a friend with you. She is not loyal. She's friend with all of the mental struggles that we might go through. So my thing is actually anxiety, and then the depression latches onto it. So if I can get hold of my anxiety, I got a control of my depression. And that's kind of how it works for most people. If you can kind of get to the other sort of mental health issue, then the depression will sort of figure itself out, because it latches itself onto the initial struggle or issue that you're having. Okay, so my thing is anxiety. And so because I've had it since I was quite a young child, I think I had my first panic attack, not just anxiety attack, but panic attack when I was 5 or 6 years old. I still remember, I was very, very young. And so I've had it for a very, very long time. And because it wasn't known back then, remember, I was born in the 1900s. And I'm not talking the 1990s. I'm talking the 1980s, okay? Mental health issues wasn't as commonly spoken about back then as they are today. And so when I had these issues, it wasn't, nobody was thinking, oh, there's she has something mentally, she has anxiety, there's something going on there. It was sort of either oh, there's a little bit of hysteria, maybe she's just kind of a little bit drama queen. And as I got older, there's a little hair somewhere here, that one. And as I got older, it sort of became more like a, being Muslim. And hey, girlies, those of you who've experienced this, please let me know, because I can't be the only one who's had this. Oh, there must be like a jinn, there must be a possession or something. Like, first of all, it was like evil eye. And then when I started having like more frequent like panic attacks rather than just anxiety, it became on like full on possessions. Like, I had to go and get like, exorcisms and stuff like that. I remember having to do that when I was in Morocco and stuff. But of course, none of that actually helped, because it wasn't possessions, it wasn't jinn. They may have made things worse once I was in the throes of the anxiety attacks and whatever, but it was a mental health issue. That was what it was. But so those of you who, like, I'm with you, like, I stand there with you. I have lived many lives, ladies. I have lived so many lives, it's unreal. So I just want to hear how many of you have also had that experience when you were younger, that, it was more common for people to be like, it must be like black magic or evil eye or a possession, before we look at the mental health aspect. Just curious. Okay, so because nothing really was done about like the anxiety thing, because nobody actually knew the whole thing about anxiety at that point, the depression kind of hit me quite early on in my life as well. So I remember, and I remember I didn't know that this was anxiety. So I just also thought that was the same thing. It's a jinns, it's shaitan, it's all of these things. I must be going crazy. Something's wrong with me. And it wasn't until much later on in life that I learned what I was experiencing was anxiety and depression. And my depression when I was younger took shape in sleeping. So that was how my depression kind of took its shape. I would sleep my days away. So I would go to school, and when I was off school, I would go home and I would put music in my ears with my CD player. Do you remember that one? And I would listen to music and go to sleep. And then I would just sleep until dinner time. And then I'd wake up and be up a little bit. And then I would go back to sleep. And I did that for a couple of years. I remember this so clearly, that I would sleep so much. Unless I had like other plans, of course, that day or something. But generally speaking, that was my days. And I remember it so clearly because I thought something like it's easier for me to go to sleep than it is to be awake. I like being in my... Yeah, you want to play with that now? The noisy thing? Okay, cool, go ahead. It's easier for me to do that than kind of face my reality. And it's easier to be in my dream world than it is to be in my reality. I didn't know back then, but that was the depression. That was when my depression was fully kicking in. I didn't know that until, as I said, later on, when my therapist actually pointed that out for me. It's like, that sounds like you were going through depression. I was like, I didn't know that. Like, okay. But anyway, all of this to say that I've experienced struggles with my mental health for many, 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 many years. It wasn't until, I want to say I was 25 or 26 when I'd had enough. Like, I'd had anxiety and panic attacks my whole entire life. And there came a point where I went to the doctor because I'd become a bit of a shut-in. I think there was like a good 6 months where I was not going to work. I'm like hardly going to college. I was just avoiding people. I wasn't going out. I was trying to stay in as much as I could, because going outside would trigger what I didn't know back then was panic attacks. So I became a bit of a shut-in. The only time you saw me going out was to take my dog out for a walk and to get food. And then for like the necessities to like not make people worry so much about me. But every time I was out, I was either having a panic attack and hiding it, or I was going out to the point where I was like, oh my God, if I stay out, then I'm going to have another panic attack. And then like I was rushing home before that could happen. And at that point, I'd had enough. I couldn't live like that. I was like, this is not a life. So I went to the doctor and I was like, I think I'm going insane. Like, something's wrong with my mind. And I honestly, again, still didn't know what anxiety was, still didn't know what depression was. And I went to the doctor and I was like, I think I'm actually going crazy. I think I'm insane. Something's wrong with my mind. That was my thoughts. I thought they were going to like admit me to a psych ward, like to be like fully, rubber cell, all that stuff. And the doctor was just like, oh, it sounds like you have anxiety. I was like, well, anxiety? No, I'm not anxious. And she's like, no, you have anxiety. It's not about being anxious or having a lot of stress in your life. It's a mental health disorder. And we did the test and she was like, yeah, okay, you're coming up quite high, but also with depression and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a little strange. I'd never heard of that. And then after that, I did my research and I kind of learned a little bit more about the two. I didn't start off with medication. I like taking medication for anxiety and depression. What I did was lifestyle changes to begin with. And it wasn't until 5 years ago that I started taking medication. 5 years ago? Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago, I started taking medication for my anxiety. And that was probably the best thing I've ever done. Because again, my thing was not a lifestyle triggered anxiety or depression. It was, as I said, to come to believe, and my doctors also believe, like more like a chemical imbalance. My brain doesn't know how to fire out certain hormones and stuff like that. And the best thing that I've done was start taking those medications. But I did that after like a good 10 years, not 10 years, 7 years of not, just raw dogging it, or whatever you call it. I don't know if that's a rude word. Maybe it is. Raw dogging it. I'm still going to say it. Or just like trying to figure it out on my own. And the best thing I did for myself was start my medication. And I'm on medication still to this day. The one thing though, and this is where we come into I just needed to give you that kind of background just so you kind of understand where I'm coming from. The one thing though that I have come to learn about my anxiety is that my sleep triggers it very, very much. So I am on daily medication for my anxiety. And because I'm, again, dealing with the root issue, the depression is easier for me to handle, i.e. if I take care of the anxiety, the depression is kind of going hand in hand with that. My sleep patterns, even when I'm on a medication, can still trigger anxiety attacks in me. And one thing that Ramadan does for me, and for all of us, is what? It disrupts our sleep patterns. One thing that you will see most people complain about during Ramadan, and we're not talking about the Ramadan in the 2010s, we're not talking about 2015, 16, 17 Ramadan, that was like June, July, August, we're not talking about those. We're talking about just like Ramadan in general, is it will severely, and I say severely for a reason here, push your sleep rhythm out of sync. You are tired beyond reason. Most people will complain about their tiredness, their fatigue, their sleep being disrupted before they'll complain about being hungry or thirsty. In fact, especially this year, I don't think I've met or heard about a single person who's like, oh, I'm really thirsty or really hungry. What people are still saying is, I am so tired. I am so tired. Like I'm struggling to stay awake in the daytime. I'm struggling to wake up. La 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 la. So for someone who has a mental illness, a mental struggle, call it whatever you want, who's already going through something that requires some type of stability with sleep rhythms. And that's not just anxiety, that could be any other things. PTSD usually also has some element of like, with their sleep deprivation, with the brain being more fatigued, you can trigger more sort of flashbacks and things like that. There are so many mental struggles that are heavily dependent on good sleep hygiene and a sleep rhythm. And when that is disrupted, that means even if you're on medication and you're otherwise doing really, really well the rest of the year, that Ramadan can trigger episodes. And I'm currently in one. And when I'm saying episode, I just mean that I'm struggling with my anxiety these days. It starts off with the fatigue, which for those of you who were expecting an episode on Thursday, an episode didn't come out because I was so tired. Because again, for all of us, we're all tired. So it's not a unique experience. But for those of us who have the mental struggle, there's that added element of this is pulling on our sabr on another level than just, oh, I'm tired. It is, I'm tired and my mental struggles are going to play up now. They're going to flare up and they're going to play up with me and they're going to, cause issues. And one of the things that mine does specifically, and I've never heard anybody have the same thing. So if you do, please let me know, because the doctors, even like when I share that with them, they think it's really weird. But I'm sure, again, that I don't have any unique experience and that somebody out there shares the same experience. Mine comes out at night while I'm asleep, which means it disrupts the little sleep I do have. So I'll have anxiety while I'm sleeping. Not like I'm in bed and I'm still awake while I am sleeping. I am out. I'm not conscious for this. And my body is starting to have anxiety attacks while I'm consciously not there. So it goes through the rhythm of having anxiety attacks and sometimes even panic attacks. And it'll creep into my dream world. And then I'll have anxiety in my dream, and that'll wake me up usually. And then I'll find myself in the middle of either an anxiety attack or a panic attack. And that's what I'm going through these days, because my sleep rhythm is so out of whack, which means on top of, my sleep rhythm being out of whack in general with, going to sleep kind of late, sometimes, or like normal, it's not even late, normal times, and then waking up in the middle of the night to eat and to pray, and then going back to sleep for a few hours and then waking up again, and so on and so forth. I also have the hours that I do sleep being messed up by the actual anxiety attacks. I'm not stopping my fasts for this reason. I'm not gonna, unless it's like absolutely serious, like that I really need to, and an imperative, if I can't function at all. But as you can see, I'm still sitting here, and while I don't think you've noticed it, but I'm currently having some anxiety inside of me, and I can feel it in my breathing. So if you've noticed that, maybe that's because you're also experiencing the same thing, and there's a bit of that empathy, and you can oh, I know that kind of breathing. That's not how you breathe normally, Zara. So, I am aware of that. So I'm feeling it a lot in my body these days. But, sorry, talking about it kind of triggered it a little bit more. I shouldn't have done that. Sorry about that. I can't remember. I was about to say something, and then I just lost my train of thought. Okay, moving on, because if it's important, it'll come back to me. But the reason why I wanted to share this today with you is because I recognize that this is something that a lot of us are probably going through right now in the month of Ramadan, and probably are going through every single Ramadan. Again, because the disrupted sleep patterns. I remember, but again, I forgot it because that's what we do, right? It's survival instincts. I went through it the last year. I went through it the year before that. I went through it the year before that. I've never had a Ramadan where I haven't had anxiety issues and sleep issues this way. Oh, the lights changed so quickly. But I keep forgetting it. And then when it happens, I'm like, oh gosh, yes, I remember now. This is what I felt like last year as well during Ramadan. So it's a constant Ramadan struggle. Again, as I said, it doesn't constitute for me yet to break my fasts, because it is so far doable for me. But I want to highlight this. I want to highlight it for those of you who, like me, have these mental struggles that may be triggered by not Ramadan, but the symptoms of Ramadan, which is the deprived sleep, the extra fatigue, all of these things, and potentially also not being able to go to your comfort when you're trying to calm yourself down. For instance, what I would normally do on a day like today is take my CBD drops, because that would help me. But I can't do that because that will break my fast. So I'm kind of forced to stay in the state of anxiety, throughout the day, which is not necessarily very comfortable, but it's doable. I've done it my whole life. So I know how to do it. But for those of you out there who are going through the same things, you might not have those comforts as well. Maybe it's drinking a glass of water. Maybe it's having something sweet. Maybe it's having something salty. Maybe it's whatever it is, that can do something to you. Maybe it's also the same. Maybe you have a specific medication. Maybe you're also taking CBD drops or whatever. And you're now in the Ramadan, you're like, oh, I don't have that thing. I can't lean on my comfort blanket. That's taken away from me because it's, I'm fasting. It'll break my fast. And I don't have a solution. I'm really sorry. This is not an episode of like, hey, here's my solution to you. Other than, ask Allah for patience, ask Allah for guidance, ask Allah to make it easier for you, which I certainly am doing. And I pray that you will do the same. And let people know around you. Tell the people around you what you're going through. Be vocal about it, so that the people around you can also extend their patience to you if you're having off days. And for those of you who don't go through this, who don't experience this during Ramadan, check on the people around you. Check on the people who are going through something mentally, who have anxiety, depression, PTSD, OCD, anything. Check on them. Make sure they're okay. Make sure that that Ramadan is not triggering them too much. And if it is, that you're there for them, that you can support them through what they're going through, that, just be there for them, ask about them, because we want to be a part of Ramadan as well, right? We want to get the blessings of fasting as well, and the prayers and everything, and waking up for suhoor, and praying tahajjud and fajr and all of these things. We want to do it just as much as the next person, but it might come at a I'm not going to say higher cost, because that's not what it is. It's not about like, oh, my cost is higher than your cost, but it, physically, mentally might come at a higher cost for us, because we have to extend ourselves a little bit more to make sure we don't fall off it, because there's I don't know how else to say it, but a higher cost. But I don't mean it that way, and I really don't want you to take it that way, because that's not what I mean by it, but I don't know how else to sort of describe it. So while I don't have any solutions for you today, or any answers to how sort of like to get through it, I would really just urge you to speak to people around you about it. Make sure that people around you know what you're going through. Speak to Allah about it. May Allah reward you for your efforts, even though you're sort of struggling through it a little bit. And when you're struggling through it, stay patient with yourself. Show yourself a little bit of grace. Don't beat yourself up. One thing that I've also done, actually, I'm going to give you this also. One thing that I've also done is I've taken the pressure off myself in how much I feel like I have to do. And that's one thing that I've noticed. I'm actually going to speak into this a little bit more. I'm so sorry if you thought I was coming to an end there and you were like, okay, finally, she stopped talking. I'm going to continue a little bit more. So I've seen people on social media make these like, oh, it's Ramadan, so I have to do this, that, this. And usually it's like, so it's time, that month where I have to attend to all my prayers, pray extra prayers, so like you wake up earlier for the tahajjud, and you stay up later to pray tarawih. And I have to make my dhikr, and I also have to be social. I have to go to work, I have to get my 10,000 steps a day, I have to go to the gym, I have to and they list all of these things. And I notice quite often that half of them are unnecessary, or maybe a third of them at the very least are unnecessary. And I was looking at my own lists of things that I kind of like had put on myself, and I was like, how much of this is unnecessary right now for me? And quite a lot of it was. And one of the big ones was that I've kind of been back in my fitness journey after a while and going to the gym and stuff, which has been making me really happy and bringing me a lot sort of mentally as well. But over the course of Ramadan, it was actually causing me a lot of stress and anxiety, in that I didn't feel like I had the time, and trying to fit it in. Like, while I love working out while I'm fasting. I feel very strong. I feel very energized and empowered. Sorry. Time-wise, in the daytime, it was bringing me a lot of sort of like stress to try and figure out where I'm going to fit it in. If I also want to be home in time for prayers, I want to pray extras. I also want to read in my Quran. I'm reading another book about the Prophet ﷺ that I want to get through. I also have my work. I've got Italian lessons, like other things that are not as, like that are non-negotiables for me, if that makes sense. Like those are my non-negotiables. And then there are my negotiables. The gym is a negotiable, even though outside of Ramadan, it's a non-negotiable. I have to go to the gym. But now I'm feeding my soul. I'm nourishing my soul, which means that going to the gym is not a negotiable for me. It is not a non-negotiable. Oh, wow. It took a while to get that sentence out, but I got it in the end. So I was like, okay, I'm going to remove that. That's so dunya based right now that it's more important for me to feed my soul in the month of Ramadan than to feed my body if that is causing me undue stress, if it's making me rush my prayers, if it's making me skip on reading my Quran or something like that. Do you see what I mean? So and by the way, please don't take away from it that if you can go to the gym and it's not doing anything like that for you, that you should, stop going to the gym over the course of Ramadan. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm just giving you an example of what I've sort of had to say. This is not something I'm going to have to cut out during the month of Ramadan, or at least cut down on severely, so that I don't stress around it so much. Again, I'm sorry for the breathing. I can't help it. So if that's annoying you, I can't do anything. I'm going through like a little bit of anxiety. The second thing that I've done, like the weather is getting a little bit better here in Sicily, and I've had in my head like once a week I'm going to go to the beach with my dog so they can run. Like especially my girl dog, she's getting a little fat. I'm not gonna. She is, and just for like health reasons, she needs to run. And I had to be like, I will only do that when I absolutely like have to. And over the course of Ramadan, I it's more important for me if I can to be at home and pray. Again, like it's a little drive to the beach, it's a little drive back, and once I'm there, they have to run for a while and whatever. And again, it sounds like a ridiculous thing, doesn't it? It sounds like a silly thing to sort of be like, I'm not going to go to the beach and take my dogs for a walk. They still go for long walks, don't worry. But to go, like to take that extra drive somewhere, to take that time out is going to take time out because the prayers are kind of close together this Ramadan. They're not very split up over the day. There's like 2.5 hours maybe between, like Dhuhr and Asr. I don't know, maybe 3 hours. Is it 3 hours? Yeah, probably 3 hours. But still, I don't want to stress about it. I'm also doing like double prayers because I'm trying to catch up on some of my missed prayers from my past. So I'm praying double prayers and then extra prayers and stuff like that. These are choices that I have made. Because it is more important for me to get from Ramadan everything that I can, then get from dunya what I can while also trying to get from Ramadan in the month of Ramadan. Ramadan is 1 month in the year. 1 month in the year. And I have the rest of the month in the year to focus on the dunya, to do other things and, whatever I want to do. But during Ramadan, there are so many blessings and so much reward from doing all of these things. And none of us know if we're going to have one more Ramadan in this dunya, right? So I don't want to miss out on it by saying I'm trying to squeeze dunya in. That's ultimately what I'm trying to say. So I'm giving examples that might sound silly or ridiculous to you because you have the wherewithal and the capacity and the energy and whatever. And alhamdulillah, I'm really happy for you. I am. I'm sorry, that sounded really sarcastic, but I'm not meaning it sarcastically. I really am happy for you for that. I wish I could do that, But I've just discovered within myself that I would rather prioritize the things that I can get in Ramadan that are the non-negotiables for me than trying to get in the dunya non-negotiables outside of Ramadan for the rest of the year. So yeah, am I going to maybe lose some of my fitness, whatever, during the month of Ramadan? Yeah, I am. That's okay, because I can always get it back if I'm meant to, but I don't know if I live for another Ramadan. So I don't know if I can get this time back with Allah. And so that is more important to me. So anyway, all of this basically to say that I've had to look at all the things that I'm trying to do in a day and look at what of those things are really important for me. What are those things that are my non-negotiables? What of those things... Oh, sorry, I just got it. Everything's going on at the same time. I got an email and then my phone said, hey, low power mode. There's almost no battery. Good thing, because I have to finish up this episode anyway. So anyway, I just hope that there was something in this episode that could give you a little bit of comfort. Even though I don't have all the solutions for you, I still hope that maybe just hearing that other people are also going through something similar and what I'm doing might give you some inspiration to look at how you can potentially manage your mental health a little bit better during the course of Ramadan, inshallah. And again, for those of you who don't have these issues and you do have a little bit more capacity for more things over the course of Ramadan, send that person a message. Give them a call, drop by, help them out in whatever way that you are able to. Again, sometimes it is just a question of saying, hey, I know that, by the way, that you're struggling with these things. I just want to let you know that I'm thinking about you. If you're struggling over the course of Ramadan and you want somebody to talk to, I'm here. It could be as simple as that. So, all right, my darling, that's all I have for you today. Inshallah, I'll be able to also record an episode on Thursday. Make dua for me, please. I will make the same for you. And, yeah, I will see you in that episode, inshallah. But until then, my darling friend, please don't forget to live in love.